What to do in Afghanistan? The request for additional forces for the U.S. Commander in Afghanistan, General Stanley McChrystal, poses cruel dilemmas for President Obama. If he refuses the recommendation and General McChrystal's argument that his forces are inadequate for the mission, President Obama could be blamed for the dramatic consequences. On the other hand, if he accepts the recommendation, his opponents may come to describe it, at least in part, as Obama's war, even though he did not start it. If he compromises, he may fall between all stools, too little to make progress, too much to still controversy, and he must make the choice on the basis of assessments he cannot prove when he makes them. This is the inextricable anguish of the presidency, for which Obama is entitled to respect from every side of the debate. We demand for an exit strategy. If that be the case, it is of course a metaphor for withdrawal, and withdrawal that is not accompanied by a willingness to sustain the outcome amounts to abandonment. In Vietnam, for instance, Congress terminated an American role, even after all our troops had in fact been withdrawn for 2 years. It remains to be seen to what extent, for example, the achievements of the surge in Iraq will be sustained there politically. In some ways, Iraq is still quite a mess. The prevailing strategy in Afghanistan is based on the classic anti-insurrection doctrine, to build a central government committed to the improvement of the lives of its people, and then protect the population until that government's own forces are able, with our training, to take over. But in Afghanistan, it's hard to say how long that could take, if it's even possible to be accomplished. The request for more forces by General McChrystal states that his existing forces are inadequate for this mission, implying 3 options: to continue the present deployment and abandon the McChrystal strategy, to decrease the present deployment with a new strategy, or to increase the existing deployment with strategy focused on the security of the population. A decision not to increase current force levels involves, at a minimum, abandoning the strategy proposed by General McChrystal and endorsed by General David Petraeus. It would be widely seen as the first step toward withdrawal. The second option, offered as an alternative, would shrink the current mission by focusing on counter-terrorism rather than counter-insurgency. The argument would be that the overriding American strategic objective in Afghanistan is to prevent the country from turning once again into a base for international terrorism. Hence, the defeat of Al-Qaeda and radical Islamic Jihad should be the dominant priority. And how much longer will this take? Perhaps the war in Afghanistan has been going on much too long. 8 years going on 9 years. The U.S. has been in Afghanistan longer than it was in World War I and World War II combined. That in itself tells something, tells a story. Theoretically, since the Taliban, according to this view, is a local, not a global threat, it can be relegated to being a secondary target. A negotiation with the group might supposedly isolate Al-Qaeda and lead to its defeat, in return for not challenging the Taliban and the governance of Afghanistan. After all, it was the Taliban which provided bases for Al-Qaeda in the first place. This theory seems to be too clever by half. Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are unlikely to be able to be separated so neatly. It would also imply the partition of Afghanistan along functional lines, for it is highly improbable that the civic actions on which our policies are based could be carried out in areas controlled by the Taliban. This is not to exclude the possibility of defections from the Taliban, but this situation or this theory is not likely. President Obama, as a candidate, proclaimed Afghanistan a necessary war. As president, he has shown considerable courage in implementing his promise to increase our forces in Afghanistan and to pursue the war more energetically. A sudden reversal of American policy would fundamentally affect domestic stability in Pakistan by freeing the Al-Qaeda forces along the Afghan border for even deeper incursions into Pakistan, threatening domestic chaos. It would raise the most serious questions about American steadiness in India. The probable target should a collapse in Afghanistan give jihad an even greater impetus. In short, the reversal of a process introduced with sweeping visions by two separate administrations may lead to chaos. Ultimately, deeper American involvement and loss of confidence in American reliability. If this has not already happened, the prospects of world order will be greatly affected by whether our strategy comes to be perceived as a retreat from the region or a more effective way to sustain it. The military strategy proposed by Generals McChrystal and Petraeus needs, however, to be given a broader context with particular emphasis on the political environment. Every guerrilla war raises the challenge of how to define military objectives or success. Military strategy is traditionally defined by control of the maximum amount of territory. But the strategy of guerrilla warfare is to draw the adversary into a morass of popular resistance in which, after a while, extrication becomes its principal objective, or withdrawal. In Vietnam, the guerrillas often ceded control of the territory during the day and returned at night to prevent political stability. Therefore, in guerrilla war, control of 75% of the territory 100% of the time is more important than controlling 100% of the territory 75% of the time. A key strategic issue, therefore, will be which part of Afghan territory can be effectively controlled in terms of these criteria. This is of particular relevance to Afghanistan. No outside force or military force has, since the Mongol invasion a long time ago, ever pacified the entire country. Even Alexander the Great only passed through. Afghanistan has been governed, if at all, by a coalition of local feudal or semi-feudal rulers. In the past, any attempt to endow the central government with overriding authority has been resisted by some established local rulers, like warlords. That is likely to be the fate of any central government in Kabul, regardless of its ideological coloration and perhaps even its efficiency. It would be ironic if, by following the received counterinsurgency playbook too literally, we produced another motive for civil war, more civil war. Can a civil society be built on a national basis in a country which is neither a nation nor a state? This is a very good question. Again, can a civil society be built on a national basis in a country which is neither a nation nor a state? So what to do in Afghanistan? It's a very perplexing question. It's a very tough or hard question to answer. And, again, there's something much more going on. And everything is connected. And these are more signs of the end times transition days. There are many signs happening daily all around the world.